Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar on the minimum wage check in Sage 50 Payroll. My name's Duncan, I'm your host and presenter, and I am joined by my colleague Calvin, who is standing by in the background ready to answer any questions. So we're going to start with a brief section on national minimum and living wage legislation, confirming the current rates and also the rates from April 2023 when they're due to go up. I'm then going to talk about the minimum wage check, and we're going to explain how to set this up in Sage 50 Payroll. I'll then process a couple of pay runs so you can see the minimum wage check in action, and I've put together a few different scenarios that would trigger an alert that the minimum wage is not being met. And then we've got a bit of a knowledge check for you guys, a bit of interaction with some quiz questions that you can answer using the polling feature of the webinar. And then finally, we have a section on further support and questions. So I'll run through the further support available, and we'll give you that chance to submit any of your final questions. So that's our plan. Let's kick off with a little bit on the minimum or living wage legislation, and starting with the difference between the two. So the national minimum wage is the minimum pay per hour that employees are entitled to. But there's now a national living wage, which is slightly higher than the minimum wage, and that is for employees who are over 23, so 23 or older. So it's the minimum hourly rate that an employee needs to be paid based on their age and whether or not they're an apprentice. And I have a table of the current minimum wage rates. So as you can see, from the 1st of April 2022, the minimum wage for employees 23 and over, that's the national living wage, was £9.50 an hour. For employees aged 21 to 22, it's £9.18. For 18 to 20s, £6.83. Under 18s are £4.81, which is the same as the apprentice rate, which is also £4.81 per hour. Now, that apprentice rate can be paid to apprentices that are under 19 or 19 and over and in their first year of an apprenticeship. So if they are 19 or over and they've completed the first year of apprenticeship, the employee would then be entitled to the minimum wage for their specific age. So apprentice rate for under 19s and those in the first year of an apprenticeship. Now, you can find more information about the minimum wage legislation on the gov.uk website and also the ACAS website. So if you have any sort of queries around the legislation, that's probably where we would refer you to. I've also got some useful links later on in the presentation, which will take you to our knowledge base articles on the feature that we'll be looking at today. So that's all I'm going to say about legislation for now. What we're going to look at next is the minimum wage check feature in Sage 50 Payroll. So we're going to start with the setup process, and then we're going to do a little bit of processing. But the first thing I want to make clear is that the minimum wage check can only be used for employees that are paid hourly. So the only way that the system can do a calculation and confirm whether or not an employee is receiving the correct hourly rate is if they are paid hourly within the system. So if you have salaried employees, it's still down to you to do a manual calculation to work out their average hourly rate based on the hours they work, and it's your responsibility to ensure that their fixed salary, whatever you're going to be paying them, meets the requirements of the minimum wage. So we're going to start by looking at the setup. So I'm just going to bring the slides down and jump into Sage 50 Payroll. Now, the first thing I want to do is to show you some of the legislation settings. And this is a handy way of quickly finding the minimum wage rates if you're not sure what they are. So if I go to the company tasks here in the bottom left corner and then go into legislation, you'll see there's a minimum wage tab. And then we've got the minimum wage that you've just seen on the slide. So national living wage for employees 23 or over is the £9.50. You've got your 21 to 22, 18 to 20, and 16 and 17-year-olds getting that £4.81 per hour. The apprenticeship rate is also shown here in the legislation settings, and it tends to change on the 1st of April each year. So when you install the year-end update, the new rates effective 1st of April 2023 will be installed into that legislation as well. So that's where you can find the rates. I will also point out that there is a checkbox to opt out of minimum or living wage validation. So if you're going to use this feature that I'm showing you today, you need to make sure that this box is not ticked. And if you did want to look at minimum wage rates for previous tax years, if you set your process date back to an earlier date, for example, in 2021 to 22, you'd then be able to view the minimum wage legislation for those earlier years as well. So I'm just going to cancel out, don't need to make any changes here, but I just wanted to show you that quick tip if you're not sure on what the minimums are. Next thing I want to show you in terms of settings is the pay element settings. So still from the company tasks, if I go into pay elements, you'll see the various payments that I'm using. Now everyone on my payroll is paid hourly, so it does mean I can use the minimum wage check. And I have payments set up for basic, overtime, commission, and I have another payment that I'm using for minimum or living wage top up. And you'll see how that comes into play a little bit later on. Now what you'll need to do is you'll need to configure your pay elements so that the appropriate payments are included in the minimum wage check. So taking basic as an example, if I click onto edit, you'll see this section towards the bottom of the settings has checkboxes to include the value and hours or number in the minimum wage calculation. So if it's an hourly payment, as basic is, you need to make sure that both boxes are ticked. So it's going to use the hours from this pay element and the amount of pay in the calculation, the value. But if it's a payment, for example, for commission, because that's not an hourly payment, but it does form part of the earnings, for this one, I've only ticked to include the value in the minimum wage calculation. So that way, if someone gets basic and commission, and we want to verify that they are getting the minimum wage with those values combined, it'll use the basic for the hours and also the value of the basic, and it will add in the commission value, but it won't class that as an extra hour. Now, overtime payments, if they're at time and a half, for example, include what's known as a premium element, which should be disregarded in any national minimum wage calculations. So if we take a look at the setup for the overtime payment, you'll see because it's a factored payment and we've got a multiplier entered, it has activated the premium element checkbox. So we need to make sure that that is ticked. So it's still an hourly payment. We're going to include the value as well, but this one's a premium. So we're going to disregard the and a half element of this when calculating minimum wage. And then this top up one, I've set this one up only to include the value in the minimum or living wage calculation. So that's your pay element settings. It's worth sort of looking through them. And if you want a quick way of checking all of the pay element settings, you can go into the reports. And if you look for company here on the left-hand side, there's a payment types report somewhere in this list. This one just here. And this actually lists all of your payments and all of the pay element settings on a single report. So you can see the minimum wage information is this section here. So we've got our basic and overtime. We've also got the commission and the top-up payment included for this minimum wage check. So it's time to start setting things up. We've checked our pay element settings and we're happy with the payments that are included. What we now need to do is to apply the minimum wage check to the relevant employees. So there's two ways you can do this. The first way would be on an individual basis by accessing the employee record, going onto the employment tab and then pay elements, and then selecting this box at the bottom to apply minimum or living wage check. Or if you wanted to do this globally, you could use global changes. So if I select everyone, you can go into tasks, global changes, payments, And then it's this option here to set the apply minimum living wage flag. So that's going to apply it to all 5 employees. They are now all updated, and they will all be included in the minimum wage check. Now, one last thing I want to show you in the employee record, and this is specifically for apprentices. So if I go into an apprentice's employee record and go onto the employment tab, you'll see there is an option to enter apprenticeship dates. So if I click on this apprentice option at the bottom, you can see I've got a start date entered. You can also enter an end date in an apprenticeship if known. And you can see for this particular employee, they are coming up to having, to the end of their first year of apprenticeship. And that, of course, will have an effect on their minimum wage. So look out for this employee in the demo as their minimum wage may change at some point. So that's about it for setup. Let's just give you a quick recap of those steps by jumping back to the slides. So the first step was to configure your pay elements and choose which ones should be included in minimum or living wage calculations. And the second step was to apply the minimum or living wage check either individually, as shown in the screenshot there, or by using global changes. So we're now ready to do some processing. And we're going to take a look at how the minimum wage check works when it detects that someone's being paid less than the minimum wage. So if I just jump back to the demo, I'm working with weekly paid employees. So I'll start by setting my next weekly pay date. If I can choose the right option there, which will be this Friday, Friday the 13th of January. I'm going to go into one employee at a time because there's specific scenarios that I want to point out. So we're just going with a regular hourly paid employee, and I'm going to go ahead and go into the enter payment screen. Now, this employee is over 23, and you can see that they're being paid an hourly rate of £9.50. They've worked 40 hours this week, and if I click on to save/next, I get no prompts because they are being paid the minimum wage. Now, if, for example, I try to amend the rate and pay them £9 an hour, and then try to save the enter payment screen, at this point, we get a prompt. So it's telling us that we'll need to increase the rate of one of the payments so that they are paid their minimum or living wage. And then it will give us a list of payments that can be adjusted automatically. And these will need to be set up as variable payments in order for this check to do the adjustment for you. So it's suggesting that I adjust basic. So I'm going to click on the adjust option. As you can see there, it's put the rate back to £9.50. So that's how it works. That's a pretty simple scenario. Let's take a look at the next employee. So we're going to bring some overtime in. Now this particular employee is also over 23. If I go into enter payments, you can see that we have given them an hourly rate of £9 an hour, but we also have some overtime worked this week. So 8 hours of overtime at time and a half. And we can see that their total gross pay is £468. Now, if we did a manual calculation, we took £468 and divided by 48 hours, which is the number of hours they've worked this week, we would see that the average hourly rate is coming out at £9.75. So you might think, well, that meets the requirements of the minimum wage. But it doesn't, because this is a premium element. The and a half element of the overtime is ignored. So when we click on to save/next, you'll see that we are being prompted to adjust a payment. So the only variable payment that we have is basic. The overtime is a factored payment. So the variable payments can be adjusted automatically. And if I click on to adjust, you can see, as we'd expect, the hourly rate goes up to £9.50. And the linked overtime payment rate has also gone up accordingly as well. So they now are earning the minimum wage once you take into account the overtime premium element. On to the next employee then. We're going to take a look in the employee record because they have a birthday coming up. In fact, it's just gone. It's today. Happy birthday, employee. So they are turning 21, which moves them up to the next band in the minimum wage. But as you'll see, when we come to pay them, well, first of all, we're getting a warning that their NI category is no longer valid. So now that they're 21, they need to be on a standard rate category rather than an under 21 category. But the rate of pay we've got in for them is the 18 to 20 minimum wage. And when I click onto Save/Next, you'll see that this time we're not getting an alert. And the reason for that is that the birthday falls in the middle of a pay reference period, and the increase in the minimum wage doesn't technically apply until the next full pay reference period. So what I can do, I can jump into the employee record and set the NI category to standard rate contributions, which is what they should be on from now. But we could still pay them the old hourly rate if we want to, because this isn't the first full pay reference period since they turned 21. So that's why we're not getting the prompt to increase their rate to what will be the 21 to 22 rate. A couple of others to show you. The next one receives a mixture of basic and commission. So if I go into the enter payment screen, we've got 40 hours, an hourly rate of £7.50, and they've also earned £100 commission. So looking at the gross pay there, £400, 40 hours worked, that's £10 an hour. So if we save these payments, we can see there's no problems detected. They are being paid above the hourly rate, the minimum wage. But if we reduce the commission, maybe they didn't earn as much of commission as they usually do, and bring their total gross pay down to £350. When I click onto Save Next, at this point, we are being prompted to make an adjustment. So it's asking us, do we want to adjust basic or commission? So they're both set up as variable payments, but I'm actually going to cancel out because I'm going to add in another pay element for minimum living wage top up. And you'll see I've set the default hours as 1 for this one, but the hours isn't included in the minimum wage check. If I save it now, I'm going to choose to do the top up, and it's given them an extra £30. So £380 for 40 hours worked is £9.50. So this is another employee who's getting the living wage. And finally, let's take a look at the apprentice. We'll go into the enter payment screen. So they're on the apprentice rate at the moment. This employee is 21, but they're in the first year of their apprenticeship. And if I click onto Save/Next, got no problems at this point because they are still within that first year. But when we do next week's payroll, we will expect to see a prompt. So any of those adjustments that we've just applied will apply for this period only. But when we come to process the next period, it will revert back to the previously saved values. So I'll just update the records for this particular week. And then you would submit your FPS in the usual way. But if we jump forward a week to the 20th of January, I'm just going to go through the full pay run just so you can see the effect of any of those previous adjustments. So going back into the enter payment screen, you can see it's retained that £9 that I put in. So I know that should be £9.50. So I'm going to update that now and click onto Save Next. For the employee with overtime, again, it has reverted back to the £9. So if I just click Save, we're being prompted to make an adjustment again. But if I want that to be permanent, I can just go into the employee record, to employment and then pay elements, and we can actually update the default rate from here. So we've now got them being paid £9.50 per hour. When I click on to Save Next, that's all fine. So employee that turned 21 last week is now in the first pay reference period where they're entitled to the new minimum wage for their age. So if I click on to Save/Next, I'm being prompted to adjust basic, If I do the automatic adjustment and then just jump back, that has gone up to £9.18. So again, you could jump into the pay elements. You could set that now as the employee's new default rate. And then finally, the employee on, oh, I've got two more. So employee on commission, let's say they've got a bit more commission this time. Maybe it's £90. You see that's over the minimum wage. And the apprentice is now into their second year of apprenticeship. So again, we're being prompted to adjust the basic, which we can do like so. So again, with this one, I might want to go into the pay element screen and put them up to the £9.18 that they would now get as a 21-year-old apprentice who has completed the first year of their apprenticeship. So that's how it all works. It's pretty straightforward in the program, but I will give you a quick recap on those steps. So a message will appear if employees are paid below the minimum wage, and as long as they have variable payments, you'll be prompted to adjust a payment automatically. If you use fixed pay elements, where the rate is fixed in the employee records, you'll still get an alert, but you'll need to change the rate yourself in the employee record. So you choose which payment to adjust, and then if you want to update the default rates, so probably something that you would do in the new tax year after the 1st of April, that can be done in the employee records for each employee. And you might also want to update any default rates in your pay element settings for any new employees that you're taking on after those increases come in. So short and sweet with this one, but I have put together some useful links. So you can read our knowledge base articles on applying the minimum or living wage check, checking your pay element settings and updating your employees' rates, as shown in the demo there. I've also put those links again to the gov.uk guidance on national minimum and living wage, and also some useful information from ACAS there, acas.org.uk. Now, what we will do to give you an opportunity to submit any questions and also give you a bit of a knowledge check is we'll run a quick quiz. So I've got 5 questions on this one, so do feel free to join in if you wish to. The questions and answers will appear on screen, and I'll share the overall results of what you think the answer is before we then tell you the answer. So I hope that makes sense. So we'll go with our first question in the quiz. And this one is, what's the current national living wage? So the choices here are £8.50 per hour. Is it £9 per hour? Is it £9.50 per hour? Or is it £10 an hour? So what's the current national living wage? And that is different to the real living wage, which is another scheme that some employers have signed up to. So we got over 50% of votes in. We'll give you another 10 seconds or so to submit a response. It's looking good so far. I've started with an easy one for you. Okay, so we will close the poll down and share the results. And I'm happy to see that 100% of respondees have said £9.50 an hour, and that is the minimum wage for employees entitled to the national living wage. So good work there with question 1. Let's go on to question 2. So for this one, I want to know, at what age does an employee get the national living wage? So is it when they turn 22? Is it aged 23? Is it aged 24? Or do they get it when they are 25? So there's been a fairly recent change to the age that you get national living wage. So it used to be one of the answers on this screen, but it changed to one of the other ones, if that gives you a clue. So I can see About 75% of the votes are in. Great, so we'll close that one down and see how you got on. So 89% of you have said that national living wage kicks in at age 23, and you are absolutely right. Used to be 25 a couple of years ago, but it is now 23 or over to get national living wage. So well done to the 89%. Next one. We did a demo on this, so let's see if you were watching carefully. What's the minimum wage for a 21-year-old apprentice who's in the second year of their apprenticeship? So is it £4.81 per hour? Is it £6.83 an hour? Is it £9.18 per hour? Or is it £9.50 per hour? So we're looking for minimum wage for a 21-year-old. They're an apprentice. They're in the second year of their apprenticeship. So which of those four answers, and they are all minimum wage rates for one of the bands, so they all correlate to a minimum wage band, but which one should this employee get? So this one's a bit closer. Had about 60% of the votes in. So let's have a look at what you've thought. So just sharing those results, 69% are saying £9.18 per hour, 31% at £6.83. And the answer for this one is £9.18. They get the minimum wage for a 21-year-old. So 21 and 22-year-olds get £9.18 per hour because they have completed the first year of their apprenticeship. So we're still in the first year of their apprenticeship. They'd get the £4.81 apprenticeship minimum wage. So well done to the 69%. Couple more for you. So these ones are to do with the program itself. So next one is where can you find the current minimum wage rates in Sage 50 Payroll? So is it within the enter payment screen? Can it be found in the employee records in the pay elements? Would you find it in the company pay element settings? Or would you find the minimum wage rates in the company legislation settings? So we showed you this at the start of the webinar. You need to do a quick check on what the minimum wage rates are. Where would you find that in the program? Enter payments, employee record pay elements, company pay elements, or is it company and legislation? Okay, so most of the votes are in there, so we will have a look at the answers. So we've got a majority going for company and then legislation, and that is where you will find the current minimum wage and living wage rates for all of the different bands. So well done to 68% who got that one right. Technically, those rates might be found in the employee records and the company pay elements if you've entered them yourself, and as well as the enter payment screen. So partial credit, I guess, for those answers, but the one I was looking for was company and legislation. And the last one for you, before we take a look at some of the further support. So what type of payment can be automatically adjusted by the minimum living wage check? So is it variable payments that can be automatically adjusted? Is it fixed payments that can be adjusted? Is it global payments, or is it factored payments? So there's only one type of payment that can be automatically adjusted by the minimum wage check. Which of those four is it? Is it variable, fixed, global, or factor? So think back to what options were coming up when we were prompted to make an adjustment. Great, we've had most of the results in, so we'll close that one down and sharing the results with you. I'm happy to see that 72% this time were correct. It is variable pay elements that can be automatically adjusted. They're the only types of payments where you can amend the rate of pay in the enter payment screen. All of the others require you to go into other places to amend the hourly rate. So fixed payments have the hourly rate stored in employee records. Global payments have the rate stored globally in the company settings. And factored payments are linked to basic pay, but they can't be adjusted directly by the minimum wage check. But there can be a knock-on effect. If you adjust basic, then the factored payment linked to basic would also adjust. So well done to anyone that got 5 out of 5. It's good to see that most people got the right answers in them. We will now just run through some further support, because it does bring us to the end of the webinar content. So if you do have any final questions, please do submit them via the Q&A, and we'll have a look at answering those for you. But if you're looking for further support after you leave the webinar today, a great place to look would be our online help centre. So you can access this either in Sage Payroll by clicking the Help Centre icon, or in your browser you can go to sage.co.uk/help. From there you can search our knowledge base for relevant articles. You can read our support guides. There's a webinars link towards the top of the Help Centre, which will show you upcoming webinars for the rest of this month, and also a link to our webinar library for previous sessions that you may have missed. There are various videos available in the Help Centre, and if you do need to contact our support team, you'll find all of the contact us options from there. Also, if you're just starting out with Sage 50 Payroll, you might be interested in Sage University, which you can sign up to at sageu.com. As a Sage member, you get completely free access to this, so you can complete our e-learning courses. You can do online certification for Sage 50 Payroll and accounts and other software, and you can dip in and out of our bite-sized learning to learn little nuggets of information when you get that spare bit of time. So Sage University, well worth checking out at sageu.com. It's part of your Sage membership, which also gives you access to Sage City, our online forum at sagecity.com, and also a series of masterclasses to help you thrive in your business. You can get to those via the link on the handout. So we have got some time left scheduled, but we'll check to see if there are any questions that we need to answer. It is your final chance really to send a question through or to download any of the handouts. So please grab those from the options on the right-hand side. I just want to thank you all for attending the webinar today, and I hope you found it useful. There will be a feedback survey that appears as you leave the webinar. So if you do, if you wouldn't mind just taking a moment to complete that survey, it really does help us with building these sessions moving forward. I am going to go on to mute briefly just to check the questions situation, and I will come back to you when we're ready to close down the webinar. So I will speak to you shortly. Hello again, everyone. And thanks for sending those questions through. There's just a few came through which have been answered. So I think we are just about ready to wrap up. So once again, I'd just like to thank you for your time this afternoon. I hope you found the session useful. We've got more of these sessions every Thursday at 2 p.m. So do check out our help centre to see what's coming up. If you wouldn't mind completing our survey, that would be very helpful to both myself and Calvin. And look out for a follow-up email. We'll send you one in about an hour's time. It'll have a link to the recording on, as well as some other useful information. So that should be coming to you in about 1 hour. So with that said, we're going to close things down now. So thanks so much for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you on some other webinars in the future. So have a great weekend, and we'll see you again soon.